What if the bloodline of Europe's most mysterious dynasty did not begin in France at all? What if the Merovingians, the long-haired kings of legend, were carrying a secret prophecy that pointed not south to Rome, but north to the shadowed fjords of Scandinavia, a bloodline that should not exist? A prophecy whispered in icy halls and carried across storm-tossed seas. History says it is impossible. Chronicles say it is fantasy. But buried in forgotten fragments, the suggestion remains the rise of kings in Gaul may have been foretold in the north, and now the urgency softens. The clash of kingdoms, the roar of Viking seas fades into candlelight on worn parchment. Imagine slow pages turning the quiet hum of a distant choir. No rushing. Just the gentle unfolding of a story that has been waiting centuries to be retold. You have heard of the Merovingians, perhaps as the line of rulers who dominated Gaul before the Carolingians seized power. Perhaps as the long-haired kings, half legendary, their origins muddied in stories of sea creatures and saints. To most, they are a footnote, a dynasty eclipsed by the brightness of Charlemagne. Yet to those who read the margins of history, they are something more. A dynasty wrapped in whispers rumored to guard a bloodline too sacred or too dangerous to be allowed to endure. But the twist that pulls us here tonight lies not in their downfall, but in their beginning. For there are threads, fragile, half-hidden, that lead far from the valleys of the Rhine or the courts of Paris. Threads that drift northward toward cold landscapes of sagas and runestones, toward Scandinavia, toward a prophecy that may have promised that kings would rise not from Rome's collapse, but from the sea-bound mysteries of the north. Our journey begins here where myth blurs with record, where history has tried very hard to erase inconvenient hints, and we will take it slowly, candle by candle, fragment by fragment. Because only in the patience of detail does the pattern emerge. So settle back, let the shadows gather, and before we venture further into the secrets of this bloodline that should not exist, take a moment to subscribe so you never miss a secret that history has tried to forget. It begins, as so many strange threads do, with a silence. Not the absence of detail, but its deliberate avoidance. When you read the early Frankish chronicles, those grand Latin accounts of Clovis and his forebears, you expect the usual litany, noble descent, pious conversion, and the bloody work of empire building. But tucked between these formal lines are hints of something else, something neither Roman nor Gallic. Foreign, unfamiliar, and just a little bit northern. You begin to notice peculiar absences. Merovec, the semi-legendary progenitor of the Merovingians, is mentioned with fanfare, and then curiously not explained. His name is offered, his status affirmed, and yet no one seems eager to trace his line further back. It is as if history itself glanced toward his parents and chose to blink. One of the earliest sources, the Chronicle of Fredegar, offers a peculiar tale. It speaks of Merovec's mother bathing in the sea, being approached, perhaps seduced, perhaps attacked by a mysterious beast from the waters. Some interpreted the creature as a sea monster, others as a symbolic vision, and Fredegar, with a shrug befitting an overworked monk, simply states that no one knows whether Merovec's father was King Clodio, or something else entirely. It's a strange detail to preserve, stranger still to present without judgment. You might wonder why they even included it, unless of course it was too important to omit, or too widely known to conceal. Yet it is not only in Fredegar's account that the strange currents ripple. In the anonymous Liber Historiae Francorum, a text from the early 8th century, the tone becomes more ceremonial, more sanitized, but the oddity remains. Merovec is inserted into the narrative almost like a placeholder there, but not fully integrated. His birth is still unexplained. His nature is still marked as exceptional, and in the surrounding passages, certain foreign names appear in passing. Place names not entirely local. Names that could, if stretched just a bit, be interpreted as echoes from the North Sea. At this point, most scholars turn away. A fanciful birth story, vague mentions of unknown lands and gaps in lineage are, after all, not uncommon in early medieval history. But then a different kind of whisper surfaces not from the texts themselves, but from their silences. Several Merovingian-era documents, letters, charters, church records, refer back to an ancestral bond to the sea. The phrase appears in variations ligatura maris affinitas pelagi, sometimes poetic, sometimes oddly technical. One charter concerning a monastery near Rouen states that the kings of the region had been drawn from across the waters tracti de trans fluctus, a phrase easily interpreted as spiritual, but perhaps not exclusively so. Now you pause. Because Rouen sits along the Seine, and while it was later known as a Norse hub in the Viking Age, this document predates those raids by nearly 2 centuries. It's as if someone had already planted the idea of kings coming from the sea long before the sails of the dragon ships appeared on the horizon. Could this be coincidence? Very possibly. Could it be retroactive imagination? Certainly. But what if it's something else? What if it's a memory, unwanted, inconvenient, but preserved in the fine cracks of the parchment? Here's where the fun begins. In 1954, a little-known antiquarian named Ernst Hallvard compiled a comparison of Carolingian and Merovingian documents for a regional archive in eastern France. He was not a famous scholar. His publication did not rock the world. But tucked in one of his appendices is a curious observation. He notes that certain naming patterns in early Merovingian grants appear to mirror naming structures found in Scandinavian sources, particularly those of the Yngling dynasty. This connection was not explored, not footnoted, not even emphasized. Just a footnote in a document few people read. And yet once you've seen it, it's difficult to unsee. Names like Clodio and Merovec bear linguistic resemblance not to Latin roots, but to older Germanic and possibly even Nordic constructs. The practice of compound naming combining elements like mer, possibly sea, and vesh, warrior or fight,